Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or it's doing good about already. This is Eagle Eyes on Tech. I am Eagle Falcon. I do apologize for the erratic posting schedule. I don't like to hide anything. I'm not going to make up any excuses for why certain weeks have been missed. Here's basically what it boils down to. A couple of weeks, it's been rather dry for interesting tech topics that don't get into politics. Unfortunately, with the major Google story, that's all a lot of tech blogs want to talk about. I don't want to talk about it. I want to try and avoid politics as much as possible. For one big reason. You are guaranteed when talking about when you're talking about politics, at least half the people you're talking to are going to be angered and leave. The only exception to that rule is if you always talk about politics. Then the only people that stick around are the people who agree with you politically. I don't want to do that. Mainly because, A, I don't want my email filled with trollish, brutish hate mail. And B, it's just not something that interests me. It just doesn't. So, last week, I actually did record an episode off the Twitch site, just through Spreaker, and I ended up not uploading it at all, because it did get too political, and I just no, I'm not going to do that. And normally I just go around to the various tech sites, try to find some little nuggets of news that are usually just not talked about. But because I'm so heavily worked at work, I haven't had the time to do that. So that's why I missed last week, and that's why I missed 3 weeks ago. So, that's why I'm not going to talk about the Google store anymore. I already gave my opinion on it. And I'm not going to talk about any stories of the like. What I am going to talk about, however, is the fact that the 8th generation of core processors has been announced. So the next generation of mainstream processors. Remember, we've talked about in the past the two-tier difference, which now applies to both Intel and AMD. The mainstream processors and the enthusiast-level processors. These are the mainstream processors. These are the ones that the overwhelming majority of PC users deal with. See, already, I have just talked about how I don't want to talk about politics, and already the chat is lighting up, granted it's just Unjust Banana, with SJW commentary. Which, not gonna lie, the thing he's saying with, I do agree with, but that's what politics does. Moving back to processors. So, new processors have been announced. There's one weird little tweak, though. The 8th generation core processors are not being branded as Coffee Lake. Coffee Lake was the internal code name for the 8th generation. The architecture these 6 release processors are being called They are being called, four release processors are being called Kaby Lake Refresh. That has me a little... How do I put this? I am baffled beyond belief as to why Intel would do this. In the past, what Intel would do when releasing processors is go by a format called tick-tock. We've talked about it quite a bit. The tick is a brand new architecture. The tock is a reduction in nanometers and a refresh of the existing architecture. It's basically the tick refined. And the names would be very similar. Sandy Bridge being the tick, Ivy Bridge being the tock, Haswell being the tick, Broadwell being the tock, Skylake being the tick, Kaby Lake being the tock. But the 8th generation would be the death of the tick-tock layout. Basically because Intel came to the realization they're having trouble getting the nanometers down any further. Which is understandable. I mean, we're down to 14 nanometers now. It gets extremely difficult to get smaller than this. The theoretical limit of how small you can go is 10 nanometers. However, many manufacturers, Intel included, believe they can break this limit. They think they can even go smaller. So since tick-tock is dead, Intel doesn't have to care about what they internally call anything. Coffee Lake is just a refresh of Kaby Lake, which is a refresh of Skylake, right? So why call something a Kaby Lake refresh instead of the Coffee Lake? This blows me away. Part of me wants to know what is going on inside the Intel naming department, but I have a feeling even they don't know. Now, granted, me and probably 3 other people in the entire world are the only ones who care about this. Very, very, very few tech enthusiasts call processors by their code names. I want to say Nehalem is the only exception to this rule, just because the jump to the Nehalem architecture was so massive. It was just mind-shattering. Going from the old Yorkfield all the way up to Nehalem. That was when the Core i7 was first announced, for those of you who don't know what Nehalem is. But since we're just talking about stupid code names, let's actually go into some real substance. What do these new 8th generation processors, which are in fact 8000 series chips, but with a refreshed architecture name and therefore just contradicting themselves. You see why this annoys me? Because the code name and the numbers just don't match. Regardless, these 4 new processors are both underpowered and disappointing, but still very powerful and extremely interesting. Let me explain. We have 4 new processors, 2 Core i7s and 2 Core i5s. Their model numbers are 8650U, 8550U, 8350U, and 8250U. That means nothing to most people. But the important thing to look at that is the U at the end. The U is an internal code name, or more of a code letter, that means that the processor is what's called ultra-low voltage. These are the processors you find in thin and light laptops, power-efficient laptops. Laptops that are designed to get all-day battery life. That's why I say these are underpowered. And the clock speeds show it. 1.6 gigahertz, 1.7 gigahertz, 1.8 gigahertz, 1.9 gigahertz. That's not anything that's really impressive. What is impressive are two things. What the processors will self-overclock to perform at, which means these processors will go all the way up to 3.6 gigahertz, 3.8 gigahertz, 4 gigahertz, and 4.2 gigahertz when the load demands it. Plus, these four processors, although they're ultra-low voltage, are quad core. That is a big deal. Normally when you look at the capabilities of, say, your MacBook Airs and other such equivalent laptops, those thin and light little 12 and 13 inchers that have the ultra-low voltage processors, the fact that they're usually dual core and a fairly low clock speed is a reason to always go, well, I can browse the web on it, but that's about it. Because of the fact you have multiple cores and the fact they can self-overclock to a good level, does mean you can do some, granted, fairly light or medium duty gaming, but you can still do some gaming and not watch the computer cry at 5 frames per second. Heck, for those of you who stream, you might even be able to run OBS and connect a capture card to it. It's getting pretty close to that level of performance in what's normally considered an ultra-low voltage processor. And for those of you who game, this potential becomes even better if the laptop also has a Thunderbolt port. Then you can just plug in an external graphic card too. Take your little 12-inch little portable pocket-sized laptop, hook up an external graphic card that's bigger than the blasted laptop, and bam, you're gaming pretty well at that point. But there's one last thing I have to say about these chips. Because these are the ultra-low voltage versions, that means that this is pretty much the worst chips that this new refresh has to offer. There's going to be some lower-end ones. We're, of course, going to see the Core i3 U series. There's going to be the Core M that always makes me shake my head and cry a little inside. But the full-size desktop and laptop processors, I'm eager to see what the 8th generation has to provide. Whether it be called a Kaby Lake refresh, or whether it's actually the Coffee Lake chips that we've been promised. Now, if you think my ranting on the fact that we were promised the codename Coffee Lake and these new chips are Kaby Lake refreshes supposedly internally, you're going to be really annoyed at the fact that apparently the next generation, the 9th series generation, is being called Ice Lake. Oh my god. Ice Lake. Because someone woke up in the morning and said, you know, let's just keep throwing Lake at the end of all of our code names. Ugh, oh my god. It actually brings me a little bit of pain to know that apparently from now until the foreseeable future now, apparently, all Intel processors will forever be known as Blank Lake. Maybe I should just stop worrying about the code names. Maybe I should just be like the rest of the tech enthusiasts and just refer to them by their generation number. But at some point I'm going to get sick of calling something the 49th generation whatever. That, I love the name Nihilum too much. Anyway, the rumors are saying that the 9th generation of what Ice Lake's going to be next year might in fact bring 8 cores and 10 cores to the whole scheme, blah blah blah. Honestly, this is way too early to speculate as to what the next generation of Intel chips are going to have. It's all rumors and theories anyway. Anyone can come up with a rumor. I can come up with a rumor tomorrow that says that AMD will invent the supercomputer on a chip. 100 cores on one chip. Whoop-de-doo. It doesn't make it true. You need concrete evidence before rumors can start being looked at closer as fact. I'm just more annoyed that everything's going to be called Lake. Sapphire Rose in the chat says that River sounds better. I agree. I'd rather have a chip series be named Ice River. Or maybe we could just go back to, I don't know, anything else. But who cares? It is just, in fact, internal code names. Alright. Next up, let's talk about Samsung releasing a new Note smartphone that will hopefully not be explosive. I know, that's such a cheap shot. It is. And yeah, it so is. Yeah, the Note 8 has been announced. Samsung has officially released it. They're what people call phablets. I'm going to call them pro phones. Because I think that just sounds better than phablet. The bigger real estate phones, this screen is some huge number. What, 6.3 inch? It's actually smaller. Wait. No, it is bigger. Never mind. I lied. Don't listen to me. So let's actually talk about the actual phone. If you remember, the Note 7 was the phone that sounded pretty good on paper, but they went through 2 different battery defects that caused the cells to overheat, combust, and expand. Which was a bit of a PR nightmare. But anyway, let's talk about the specs. These have a 6.3-inch Quad HD Super AMOLED display at the absurd underline absurd screen resolution of 2960 by 1440. That is more pixels than most televisions. It has, for its processor, the Qualcomm Snapdragon 835, the 835. It has 6 gigs of RAM. Storage, it starts at 64 gigs and goes all the way to 256, with 128 being in the middle. Dual rear cameras. One is a wide-angle lens camera, the other is a telephoto lens. Very similar to what the iPhone 7 Plus does. The battery is a little lower. It's not going to be a very good battery at 3,300 milliamps, but understandably so, Samsung's a little paranoid about putting big batteries in phones now. Which, can't blame them. That's going to be a bit of a nightmare. And it's going to start with Android 7.1.1. It's supposed to get whatever the next version of Android is, which everyone speculates is going to be Oreo. So, about that processor. What does that processor have on it? The processor is, in fact, the old 8X Cryo CPU. That means you have 2 sets of 4 CPUs. You have one set at a high clock speed, one set at a low clock speed. The high clock speed is 2.45 gigahertz. Normally, if I remember right, the more efficient speed is 1.7. 16x LTE, a very fast LTE modem. Supports USB 3.1, and the rest is basically negligible features. If you actually want the super nerd stuff and want to try and look this up, it does have the Qualcomm Adreno 540 GPU. If you actually do care about that particular brand of GPU in your phone, congratulations, you are a bigger computer nerd than I am. And I thought I was a pretty big computer nerd. I really don't care. So, what does it mean? This phone should, in theory, be one of the fastest Android phones. But, and it's a big but, what's going to really make or break the speed of the phone, as it does with just about every Android phone out there, is how much of a resource hog the additional software put on top of Android is. As well as what conflicts with each other and takes up unnecessary resources. I mean, this phone has all the resources. It has almost as much RAM as my streaming rig. Again, in theory, on paper, this should be faster than even any iPhone out there. But the biggest difference is going to be the software on top of it. The other thing that's going to be a big make or break deal is how much juice that battery is going to give. It's a smaller battery. I want to say the last note had a 4,300 milliamp battery. We're now down roughly 20%, 25% of what the previous battery was, just to make sure it doesn't explode. I hope the phone lasts all day, because that could also be a major deal breaker for the Note 8. I hope all the best for the Note 8. I've had Note phones in the past. I've loved my Note phones. One thing I will say about these newer Samsung phones, you really should be careful about the screen. Definitely get a case. Definitely get a screen protector. Because that curved glass on there is very expensive to fix if it's broken. I can vouch for this with my Samsung S6 Edge Plus, which is still just the biggest mouthful of all phone names to say. That phone, I fell on the ice in the parking lot when I was unloading a truck. It shattered the glass. It was held together because of the screen protector. But it was $300 to replace the glass. That's half the cost of the phone. And I just lived with it until the day the phone died. Unjust Banana in the chat asks if it will play Doom or explode. In theory, it shouldn't explode, and it would definitely play Doom, assuming you can get Doom on there. And Sapphire Rose in the chat can confirm that the glass is very expensive to replace. Alright, we're going to shift gears drastically. We're going to shift gears so drastically that it's not even on my tab. I'm going to talk about a message I got yesterday, in fact. And this actually starts going into what I do on the side, my Twitch streaming. Okay, for those of you who only listen to the podcast, you've probably heard me talk about this several times. But during the weekdays, I stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/eagle_falcon. Alright? Who contacted me was someone from an organization known as Bebo. I've known about Bebo through some UK streamers called Suddenly Ducks. Okay? What Bebo started as was kind of a bot competitor to DeepBot. But now Bebo is shifting gears. They are moving into competing with the actual streaming software OBS. That's their goal. Their goal is to actually make the software that people use to stream, which I'd say, 70% of all streamers use OBS? Now, most people go, well, why compete with OBS? It's a free software that almost everyone uses. Why compete with it? What's the big deal? A lot of people don't realize this, or they just don't think about it. But OBS takes up a lot of resources, and I do mean a lot. I'm currently streaming this live on Twitch right now, and just streaming at 720p at 60 frames per second, it is using 23% of my CPU. Just to stream. And right now, I'm not even doing much. I'm staring at a screen and talking about tech. This CPU usage goes up as you game, of course. Even more so if you're using a 1 PC setup. I use a 2 PC setup, and because of the strain of OBS and the capture card, I can't go to 1080p yet. My streaming rig isn't powerful enough. I actually need to upgrade in order to go to 1080p. Bebo is looking at this and saying, we can combine a lot of features together that streamers use and be more CPU efficient. And I believe that. OBS is terribly inefficient. It's comically inefficient. It's not even funny. So they invited me to be part of their alpha partnership program. And I accepted. I'm the kind of tech guy who loves to try out the new stuff. See how well it works. Now, Bebo says it calls itself What If OBS and Streamlabs Had a Baby? That's in fact what you see on the live stream right now. That statement in itself is wrong. It's not what if OBS and Streamlabs had a baby. Bebo is what would happen if OBS, Streamlabs, Deepbot, and I can't remember what the last one was. Wow. Why can't I... Oh. It's on like the tip of my tongue. It was another bot that did viewership currency. Ah, well. I got as best to say, what if OBS, Streamlabs, and Deepbot all had a baby? All together. And that's pretty much what Bebo is. It's a streaming software. It does notifications just like Streamlabs. But it also does a lot of the stream management that Deepbot does. Awarding a fake currency for viewing. Letting you play mini games with that currency. Using that currency to play a GIF on the screen. Or play a sound effect. Those sort of things. Bebo is all that in one. This sounds like a dream come true to streamers. Simplifying so much into one package and taking up so little CPU usages that you don't have to worry about some sort of crazy 2 CPU setup like I got. It sounds great. However, it's in alpha for a reason. Just playing with it last night, I found some problems that made this thing that seemed too good to be true basically unusable for my stream at this point. One, you couldn't use the chroma key, which is the ability to take a green screen like this and turn anything that's this color into a transparency effect. It didn't have that. I mean, it had it, but you had to have the stream live in order to tweak it. It took me 2 hours to perfect this screen, to get the lighting just right, and to get the exact shade of green just right, to take out the entire background, both the lighter section at the top and the darker section at the bottom, without doing anything crazy like trying to make my hair somewhat translucent, or taking out the bunny on top of the mic, or anything of that nature. Or like make certain chunks of my skin that are just kind of a little like yellowish to the white light, to not take that out. To have the stream live while tweaking that is, that's really bad. But that's nowhere near as bad as one major thing I couldn't figure out and I haven't gotten a response back yet on. it can't take footage from a capture card. So if you were a console streamer, that's it. You can't use Bebo. If you're using two computers like I am, you can't use Bebo. I have high hopes for this product, and I still want to help them make this product a reality and see it grow and actually help them make it a great tool. But it's just, it's not there yet. That is really disappointing. But don't let my frowning upon it stop you from, by all means, I do encourage you. Go ahead, try it out. See what you can do with it if you are in fact a streamer and you know what you're doing. You can go to Bebo.com, you can download the alpha right now. So, as much as I'd love this to be the tool I can take right now and start using, it's not there yet for me to use it. But again, I do want to see great things from this, and I will be keeping my eye on it, and I do want to help them out wherever I can. So there. I'm not going to really go and say that it's doomed, it's ruined, everything's ruined, don't even bother. It is important to point out that although the product looks really clean, I'm not even going to lie, the interface looks so much cleaner than OBS. I mean, it looks like a finished product. But it's not. That is very important to point out. And yes, I do see you over there, Rhino. Like, right as I see your message pop up, I was just getting to the point that it is, in fact, an alpha. So, as I said, I will be keeping an eye on this. And with that, I want to talk about the next thing that kind of came up yesterday for the streaming world. Well, not really just came up, but something I want to kind of re-look at. And that's what Twitch calls VODcasting. Let me get a quick page up for that. Alright, so VODcasting. What is VODcasting? VODcasting was something that Twitch introduced as a tool for streamers. How long ago? 2-3 months ago? And it sounded very helpful. VODcasting allowed a streamer to go through their various videos they already have uploaded to Twitch and play a playlist of them. This was introduced shortly after the ability of uploading whatever you want. So around that time, I gave it a go. On my days off, when I was on my off-day streamings, that was Tuesday and Friday, that's what I would do. I would have a vodcast going of some sort of series I've done. Yesterday was Chrono Trigger so far. Tuesday was half of Danganronpa. I think before then I did FF12. It's now starting to become a blur before that. And I even went and recorded an intro and an outro to the vodcast explaining what it was. I also included in the title saying This is a vodcast. I'm not online. Here's the command so you can see what else it is. Etc., etc. But here's the thing. Twitch never was vocal about what a vodcast was to the average user. They put up one blog post, and that was basically it. It took Twitch a while to do anything else to try and differentiate the difference between a live broadcast and a vodcast. The only real difference in the end was there would be a gray dot instead of a red one. And it in fact took Twitch 2 months before bringing that to their mobile site as well, and their apps. Heck, when Twitch did the redesign for their mobile app that's been either extremely loved or extremely hated, they didn't bring the gray dot signifying what's a vodcast until a month after it launched. So after 3 months of doing vodcasts twice a week on my off days, what have I discovered? I have seen a few cheers, a few new follows, but one thing I've noticed, and it's troubling, are my follower numbers going down. Now, right off the bat, anyone who knows anything thinks, okay, that means people are leaving because they don't want to see pre-recorded past streams. That sounds boring. But I'm not sure if that's the case. Because one thing about my particular stream is that a while ago, someone went and thought they were being cheeky and had a whole bunch of bots follow my stream. What I don't know right now is if the people are unfollowing because it's a vodcast, or if people are unfollowing because they were bot accounts and now they're finally being caught and banned. Or it could be accounts that came on through the onboarding program, saw my content, and then went like, oh, I don't like that guy. I don't like his sarcastic snark, and then unfollowed. I don't know. Is it helping? Is it hurting? 3 months later, I don't know. And the other thing is that you ask the viewer's opinion, you either get the theory I had where Well, on paper, it should help, right? But otherwise, Or you get the people that don't even know what a vodcast is and think you're ignoring chat and unfollow because of that. And most of that, the fact that there are viewers who are confused at the fact that you're viewing a live channel and it has pre-recorded footage on it, I think that is what's hurting vodcasting more than anything. Alright, Sapphire Rose in the chat asks, hasn't there been weird things going on with the mobile app where it kind of follows people automatically for games you like? Yes. That's what's called the follower onboarding program. That's what I'm talking about whenever I say the onboarding program. If you hear other streamers call it the onboarding program, that's what that is as well. That's also kind of why the follower numbers have really lost even more value than they've ever had before. Like back when I started, hitting mile markers like 400 followers, 500 followers, 600 followers, 1,000 followers, etc., etc., etc. Those are really important because that meant, hey, those are people who are following you and they might come back to view you. But with the follower onboarding program, now people open up the app and they're following a whole bunch of people. It's like, oh, I don't know this guy. Oh, maybe I don't like his personality. And the follow now becomes even less valuable. It's actually even caused a lot of streamers to turn off follow alerts. So yeah, I'm actually very curious to hear feedback from other people, whether they are users of Twitch, whether they are streamers on Twitch. I want to hear your opinions on VODcasting. I want to hear you. Write me up. You can email me at eaglefalcontech@gmail.com. I'd love to hear feedback about the vodcast program, not only as a streamer, but also from the purpose of, as a podcaster going, did this concept, did the vodcast concept that Twitch released backfire? We may never know. Hopefully, we'll get to the bottom of it soon. Lastly, I don't normally talk about specific motherboards because in the grand scheme of things, if I went and talked about every motherboard in existence, a lot of them are going to be, well, this one has a nice color. It has so many gaming edges and so many LEDs for LED purposes. It looks like a gamer motherboard for gaming. This motherboard is very, very special. This motherboard, the Asus B250 motherboard. I'm about to say a whole lot of techno terms. If you don't understand them, please bear with me. I promise you, I will explain what makes this motherboard so interesting. Alright? It's a B250 Intel chipset, which is kind of the mid-tier but because it's not top tier, it's considered bottom tier. That's just kind of how chipsets are. It's got your standard 1151 LGA socket for your Kaby Lake CPUs. We've got 4 USB 3.0 ports, 2 USB 2.0 ports. The thing is that it only has 2 RAM slots. So you're not getting a whole lot of RAM on there. I mean, it's going to be a mainstream chip. Nothing a whole lot there. But here's the thing. It has 3, count them, 3 24-pin power supply connectors to hold 3 power supplies, as well as 3 Molex connectors to power its PCI Express ports. It has 18 1X PCI Express slots and 1 full-size 16X PCI Express port. Those of you who understood that are now asking, why? Why would you do that? The answer is Bitcoin mining. Yes. The full name of this motherboard is the Asus B250 Expert Mining Motherboard. Its sole purpose in life is to power a ton of graphic cards for Bitcoin mining. Although nowadays you mine Ethereum, not Bitcoins, but that's beyond the point. It's still easier for anyone to understand when I say Bitcoin mining. You are going to need a custom case for this motherboard. You are going to need a whole lot of risers. You're going to need a whole lot of ribbon cables to connect graphic cards to these 19 ports. The reason it's got the 3 24X ports, or 24-pin power supply connectors, is so that when you hit the on button, it turns on all 3 power supplies, so that all 3 power supplies can power all the graphic cards you hooked up to this thing. And for Unjust, who just said that a lot of people don't use cases, technically, if you want to be technical, a milk crate is still a case. I know a lot of people don't use cases. What they do is that instead they have the motherboard sit in a milk crate and then they screw in the motherboards to the edge of the milk crate. So, in layman's terms, for those of you who aren't as techno-savvy, because I'm not just referring to like one person in the chat. I do like to try and explain the incredibly technologically absurd to those who don't understand who don't have a full grasp on technology. That's why I go through these in-length depth instructions to try and have everyone understand and be on the same page. Here's basically the bottom line. This motherboard has only one purpose. You are never going to do anything on this motherboard but mine cryptocurrency, but mine bitcoins, but mine Ethereum. Its sole purpose in life is to suck power and to power graphic cards to do a massive amount of math just to mine bitcoins. It is such an impractical design for a motherboard. This motherboard has almost zero chance of being used for anything else other than maybe a word processor. But somehow, Bitcoin mining, which, a reminder, Bitcoins, Ethereum, and any sort of cryptocurrency of the like has zero, underline zero, of anything backing up its value. But there are still computer component manufacturers who are going to go ahead and make parts like this specifically for that one purpose. And keep in mind, the way the slots are laid out, there is no way that a computer you build with this board is ever going to look pretty. There's no way. Unless Asus goes ahead and makes a case specifically for this motherboard. There's no way it's ever going to look pretty. It's going to look like a giant open mess. And as much as I am a tech enthusiast, I like elegance to a technological build. In the end, though, it still just blows me away that this motherboard exists. Because Asus wouldn't make this part unless people want this part. Because there's only one company in existence that would make a motherboard for no reason, and that's EVGA. But of course, that is for another day. It's just... I still can't get over this. The build is just so crazy. And it's still crazy the fact that Bitcoin mining is so old, and only now are manufacturers building parts specifically for those few people that exist out there that are still mining cryptocurrency. That's going to conclude the podcast for the day. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully, and I do say this, hopefully, we're going to be back on a weekly schedule. Take care, everyone. Please do email any questions you have to eaglefalcontech@gmail.com. And we'll see you next week. Take care. See you next time. Actually, one quick PS onto the podcast here that Unjust Man just kind of quickly reminded me about with his cute little pun. What has happened to the co-host? If you're a longtime listener of the podcast, you know I usually do the podcast with Regret the Van. Unfortunately, what's pretty much happened is that Regret has moved from third shift to second shift, which has basically made it near impossible for him to co-host with me on Eagle Eyes on Tech. There's no fight between us. There's nothing like that. No, it's just that his work schedule has changed so that it's extremely difficult for him to co-host with me. I am still looking for a co-host, but we'll see how that works out down the road. So just wanted to get that quick PS in. I'm not going to replay the outro or anything like that. So take care.